I was shaking with rage on my front lawn in Maplewood Estates, my fists clenched so tight my knuckles turned white, as a crew of HOA lackeys ripped down my $2,500 solar panels, completely clueless that I, Ethan Carter, was the state investigator sent to bury them. My blood boiled as I pictured their smug faces when they'd realized they'd just picked a fight with the one guy who could bring their whole corrupt empire crashing down. I'd poured my heart into going green, and now they were tearing it apart, right in front of me. Before I continue the story, write a comment below. Where are you watching from? Like if you want to constantly win in any conflicts. It all kicked off 3 days ago, on a blazing Tuesday morning in late April 2024. I just settled into my new place at 312 Willow Lane in Raleigh, North Carolina, after a brutal year of starting over. The house was a dream. A 2-story fixer-upper with a south-facing roof, perfect for the solar panels I'd been obsessing over for months. I'd shelled out $12,000 to Green Future Solutions for the installation, and when the crew finished bolting those sleek black panels up last week, I felt like a king. I was finally sticking it to the system, slashing my electric bill, and doing my part for the planet, until the HOA decided to play dirty. I was still riding that high when I checked my mailbox that afternoon and found a certified letter that hit me like a punch to the gut. I tore it open, my hands trembling with a mix of dread and fury, and there it was in screaming red letters. Notice of violation. The Maplewood Estates Homeowners Association demanded I rip down my solar panels within 72 hours or face $150 daily fines. I stormed into my kitchen, slamming the letter on the counter so hard my coffee mug rattled. The $12,000 receipt from Green Future was still tacked to my fridge with a magnet shaped like a basketball, my one reminder of the victory I thought I'd won. This couldn't be happening. I grabbed my phone and fired off a text to my neighbor, Jake Miller, who lived at 308 Willow Lane. Yo, Jake, did you see Linda creeping around my roof this morning? What's her deal? Jake shot back a reply in seconds. Yeah, man, she was out there with her clipboard, snapping pics like a paparazzi. She's been gunning for you since you painted your mailbox yellow last month. Said it clashed with the neighborhood vibe. Watch your back, Ethan. Linda Harper. That self-righteous busybody who lived at 316 Willow Lane in a picture-perfect crafts home with rose bushes so pristine they looked fake. She'd been on my case since day one, always muttering about community standards like she owned the whole street. I gritted my teeth and yanked open my desk drawer, pulling out the approval documents I'd submitted to the HOA 6 weeks ago. There it was, Form 17A, External Modification Request, signed by the HOA president, Stephen Brooks. I had their permission in black and white, and I wasn't about to let Linda ruin my day. A loud knock on my door snapped me out of my thoughts. I flung it open, ready to give whoever it was a piece of my mind. And there stood Linda, her blonde bob frozen in place like a helmet, her Maplewood Estates polo shirt ironed within an inch of its life. I see you got our notice, she said, her voice dripping with fake politeness. Those panels are a blight, Ethan. Everyone can see them. That's the whole point, Linda. I snapped, my voice louder than I meant it to be. They need sun to work. And I've got approval. Right here. I shoved the form in her face, but she snatched it from me, her eyes narrowing like a hawk spotting prey. This form's outdated, she said, her tone icy. The board passed new aesthetic guidelines last month. All exterior modifications now need architectural committee approval. Newsflash, I wasn't told about any new guidelines. I shot back, my pulse racing. It was in the newsletter, she said, her smirk making my skin crawl. Guess you didn't read it. Stephen might have signed this, but the board decides together. Those panels violate Section 9, Paragraph 4. No installations that ruin the neighborhood's harmony. She handed the form back like it was trash. Take them down, or pay the fines. Your call. As she turned to leave, she tossed one last jab over her shoulder. Oh, and your tulips are 3 inches too tall. Expect another violation notice next week. I slammed the door so hard the frame rattled, my chest heaving as I tried to calm down. This wasn't just unfair, it was personal. I knew my rights. North Carolina's Renewable Energy Act protected solar panels. HOAs couldn't just ban them on a whim. I was about to start Googling lawyers when my phone rang. It was my boss, Sarah Bennett, from the North Carolina Energy Commission. Ethan, I've got big news, she said, her voice buzzing with excitement. The governor just approved our investigation into HOAs blocking renewable energy projects. We've had 20 complaints this year alone. I need someone to lead this, someone who gets the stakes, both technical and personal. You up for it? I glanced out my window, where Linda was now whispering to another board member, pointing at my roof with a smug grin. Sarah, I'm your guy, I said, my voice tight with determination. I'm dealing with that exact problem right now at my own house. No way, she said, almost laughing. Well, that's perfect. There's one HOA that's been a real pain. I'll send you the file, Maplewood Estates. Ring a bell. I nearly dropped the phone. Oh, it rings all the bells. After we hung up, I yanked open my laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard as Sarah's email popped up. The file listed 15 complaints against Maplewood Estates, denied solar applications, threatening letters, even a $500 fine for a rain barrel. I dove into the state laws, my adrenaline pumping. The Renewable Energy Act was airtight. HOAs could regulate placement, but they couldn't outright ban renewable energy. Maplewood wasn't just being petty, they were breaking the law, and I was going to make them pay. The next morning, I was chugging my second cup of coffee when another knock came at my door. I stormed over, ready for a fight, and found Stephen Brooks himself, all 6 feet 2 inches of him, standing there in a navy suit that screamed, "I'm better than you." "I hear Linda talked to you yesterday," he said, his voice smooth but laced with a threat. "Sorry for the mix-up, Ethan. I didn't realize your panels would be so obvious." "They're solar panels, Stephen. They go on the roof," I said, my voice rising. "And you signed my approval form." He flinched, but only for a second. "A mistake on my part. Look, we're reasonable. The board will waive the fines if you take the panels down by tomorrow. We can talk alternatives, maybe ground-mounted panels behind your fence." "My backyard faces north, genius," I said, my patience gone. "They'd be useless there." "That's your problem, not ours," he said, his fake smile vanishing. "Those panels are coming down, one way or another." He straightened his tie, his eyes cold as ice. "Let's not make this uglier than it needs to be." After he left, I called Green Future Solutions, my voice shaking as I warned them about the HOA's threats. Then I fired off an email to Sarah, requesting permission to fast-track the Maplewood investigation. Her reply came in minutes. "Investigation opened. Your lead investigator. Document everything." I grabbed a security camera from my garage, my hands still trembling with adrenaline, and set it up to face my roof. Then I called Jake. "Hey, man, can you watch my house today? I've got a bad feeling the HOA's about to pull something while I'm at work." "On it," Jake said. "But what's going on, Ethan? You sound like you're about to explode." "Let's just say Maplewood Estates is about to learn a hard lesson," I said, my voice low. "Oh, and didn't you say you tried to install solar panels last year?" "Yeah, they shut me down," he said. "Said they were too modern." "What? I need that rejection letter for my records," I said. "Sure, but what's this about?" he asked. "You'll see soon enough," I said. "Just keep an eye out, okay?" Meanwhile, across town at the Maplewood Estates HOA office, Linda was behind the reception desk, her fingers tapping furiously on her keyboard as she typed up the board's latest meeting minutes. "Stephen, we need to handle Ethan Carter," she said, her voice sharp as she glanced at the clock. 4:15 p.m., almost closing time. "He's not going to back down." Stephen leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips. "Relax, Linda. I've got it covered. I called Apex Contractors. They'll take the panels down tomorrow morning. We'll call it an emergency enforcement under Section 12. He won't even see it coming." Back at my house, I was hunched over my dining table, my laptop screen casting a glow across the room as I compiled the Maplewood complaints into a single file. The HOA had been denying renewable energy projects for 2 years, solar panels, wind turbines, even energy-efficient windows. I drafted official investigation notices, my heart pounding with every word, leaving the delivery date blank for now. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Linda and Stephen are at your house with a guy in a truck, snapping pics of your roof." I texted back, my fingers flying. "Thanks, Jake. If they leave, tell me where the truck goes." 20 minutes later, he replied, "They're gone." Trucks from Apex Contractors headed to the HOA office on Oak Street. I checked the time, 4:45 p.m. The office closed at 5 o'clock. I grabbed my keys, my jaw set, and headed out, ready to confront them head-on before they could make their next move. I pulled into the parking lot of the Maplewood Estates HOA office on Oak Street with my heart slamming against my ribcage, the clock on my dashboard flashing 4:55 p.m., 5 minutes before they'd lock the doors and slink away. I wasn't about to let Linda and Stephen think they'd won this round. I stormed up to the glass entrance, my sneakers squeaking on the pavement, and pushed the door open just as Linda was gathering her purse to leave. Her eyes widened like a deer caught in headlights when she saw me, but I didn't give her a chance to speak. "I want the minutes from the meeting where the board discussed my solar panels," I demanded, my voice echoing in the small office. "Now." "We're closing," Linda stammered, clutching her purse tighter. "The minutes aren't ready yet." "When will they be ready?" I pressed, stepping closer, my jaw tight. "When Stephen approves them," she said, her voice sharp as she tried to regain control. "You'll have to come back another time." I wasn't buying her excuses. "Linda, I saw you and Stephen at my house today with that Apex Contractors guy. What are you planning?" My voice was low, but it carried the weight of a threat. She forced a thin smile, her eyes darting to the door. "We were simply getting a professional opinion on the aesthetic impact of your unauthorized installation." "Unauthorized?" I nearly shouted, my blood pressure spiking. "I showed you the approval form yesterday, signed by Stephen himself." "That approval is no longer valid," she said, her tone icy. "I suggest you leave before this gets messy." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my temper in check, and leaned in close. "Let me make one thing crystal clear. If anyone touches my property without my consent, I'll make sure you regret it. That's a promise." I turned on my heel and walked out, my hands shaking with adrenaline as I headed back to my car. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking the security camera feed on my phone, half expecting to see Linda and her goons sneaking onto my lawn with a crowbar. Around 1 a.m., headlights swept across my driveway, and I bolted upright, my heart racing. But it was just a neighbor turning around. I finally dozed off around 3 a.m., only to be jolted awake by my alarm at 6 o'clock. I checked the camera feed immediately, my stomach in knots. My panels were still there, gleaming in the early morning light, and for a moment, I let myself hope that my warning had scared them off. I should have known better. I was halfway through my first cup of coffee when my phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Ethan, you need to get outside now. They're at your house." I dropped my mug, the ceramic shattering on the kitchen floor, and sprinted to the front door, yanking it open so fast the hinges groaned. There they were, Stephen and Linda, standing on my lawn like they owned the place, with 2 guys from Apex Contractors already on a ladder, prying at my solar panels. My vision went red. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I roared, charging outside in my sweatpants and a faded UNC t-shirt, my voice loud enough to wake the whole street. "Enforcing HOA regulations," Stephen replied, his tone infuriatingly calm. "You were given notice and failed to comply." Linda clutched her clipboard, checking off items with a smug little flourish. "Section 14 of the HOA covenant gives the board authority to remedy violations," she said, not even looking at me. "We're well within our rights." "You're stealing my property," I shouted, pulling out my phone with trembling hands. "I'm calling the cops right now." "Go ahead," Linda said, her smirk making my skin crawl. "We're just doing our job." I dialed 911, my voice shaking with fury. "Yes, I need police at 312 Willow Lane in Maplewood Estates. People are trespassing and removing my property." While I waited for the cops, I started recording everything on my phone, my hands unsteady as I captured the workers carelessly yanking off 2 panels, $600 worth of equipment, tossing them into the back of their truck like they were garbage. "Those cost $300 each." I yelled, my voice cracking with anger. "If they're damaged, I'm adding it to my lawsuit." "What lawsuit?" Stephen's confident facade faltered for a split second, his eyes narrowing. "The one I'll file for illegal trespassing and property damage," I said, holding up my phone. "It's all on video." Jake came jogging across the street in his gym shorts, his hair still messy from sleep. "Ethan, what's going on? I heard you shouting from my kitchen." "The HOA decided to play vigilante," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "They're taking my solar panels by force, after I told them not to touch my property." More neighbors started trickling out of their houses, drawn by the commotion. Some pulled out their phones, recording the scene, while others whispered to each other, their expressions a mix of shock and curiosity. Linda noticed the growing crowd and stepped closer to Stephen, her voice low but not low enough. "Maybe we should wait for the police," she muttered. "No way," Stephen hissed back, his face hardening. "If we back down now, every resident will think they can ignore the rules." The workers had removed 4 panels by the time police sirens wailed in the distance. Stephen straightened his jacket, putting on his best "I'm in charge" face as 2 officers approached. "Officers," he greeted smoothly, "we're simply enforcing HOA regulations. This resident installed unauthorized equipment." I stepped forward, my chest heaving as I shoved my approval form in their faces. "I have written approval, signed by Stephen himself." "They're stealing my property." "We're removing a violation," Linda corrected, her voice sharp. "The covenant gives us this authority." One of the officers, a younger guy with a buzz cut, raised an eyebrow. "Does it give you authority to trespass after he told you to stay off his property?" "It was an enforcement action," Stephen said quickly, but his voice wavered. The second officer, an older woman with gray streaks in her hair, surveyed the scene with a frown. "I've seen HOA disputes get messy," she said, turning to Stephen. "Regardless of your covenant, you can't enter someone's property if they've explicitly denied permission. Your legal team can argue that in court." She turned to the workers, her tone firm. "You need to stop what you're doing and leave this property now." The workers glanced at Stephen, who nodded reluctantly, his jaw tight. "This isn't over," Linda muttered as they started packing up. "Oh, it's over," I said, pulling an envelope from my pocket. I grabbed it on my way out, just in case. "Stephen Brooks and Linda Harper, as lead investigator for the North Carolina Energy Commission, I'm serving you with official notice that Maplewood Estates HOA is under investigation for illegally blocking renewable energy installations." Their faces went pale. Stephen's hand trembled as he took the envelope, while Linda's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. You're what?" she sputtered. "The investigator assigned to your case," I said, a grim smile tugging at my lips. "I've been on it for 3 days, and you just handed me all the evidence I need." I gestured to the workers loading my panels into their truck, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "Thanks for making my job easier." The older officer cleared her throat. "Sir, do you want to press charges for the trespassing and property damage?" "Absolutely," I said, not taking my eyes off Stephen and Linda. "And I'll need a copy of the police report for my investigation file." The neighbors around us started whispering, their phones still recording as the reality of the situation sank in. "You set us up," Stephen accused, his voice low and dangerous. "You installed those panels knowing we'd object, just to trap us." "I installed them because I believe in clean energy," I shot back, my voice rising with conviction. "Your legal response? That's all on you." Linda's face twisted with fury. "The board will fight this. We have connections, powerful ones." "I'm counting on it," I said, my eyes locked on hers. "The governor's office is very interested in HOAs that think they're above the law." As the police took statements, Jake sidled up to me, his eyes wide. "State investigator, huh? You've been holding out on me, man." "Had to keep it under wraps," I said, lowering my voice. "But now that it's out, how many other neighbors have been denied solar panels or renewable energy projects?" He thought for a moment, then nodded. "At least 6 that I know of. Mrs. Thompson on Pine Road wanted a wind turbine. The Garcias tried for solar last year. The Patels got shut down for a geothermal system." "I'll need to talk to all of them," I said, my mind already racing with the next steps. Jake grinned. "Oh, they'll want to talk to you too." Across the lawn, Stephen was on his phone, pacing and gesturing wildly, while Linda huddled with a small group of residents who always backed the board's strictest rules. The older officer handed me a copy of the police report. "We'll need you to come to the station later for a formal statement," she said. "No problem," I said, tucking the report into my pocket. I watched as Stephen ended his call, his face grim, and a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. A woman in a sharp business suit stepped out, marching straight towards Stephen and Linda with a briefcase in hand. Even from a distance, I could see their relief at her arrival. "Who's that?" I asked Jake, my stomach tightening. "That's Rachel Bennett," he said, his voice low. "Their lawyer. She's ruthless, shut down every challenge to the HOA for years." Rachel's gaze locked on me, and she whispered something to Stephen, who pointed in my direction with a nod. I felt a chill run down my spine. "This just got a lot harder," I muttered. "You worried?" Jake asked, his brow furrowing. I forced a smile, my phone buzzing with a text from Sarah. "Governor wants an update on Maplewood. Media's starting to sniff around." I looked back at Rachel, who was now striding toward me, her heels clicking on the pavement. "Not worried," I said, my voice steady. "I've got something they don't." "What's that?" Jake asked. "The truth on my side," I said, squaring my shoulders as Rachel approached, ready for whatever she was about to throw at me. Meanwhile, at the North Carolina Energy Commission office in downtown Raleigh, Sarah was on a call with the governor's chief of staff, her voice urgent. "Yes, sir. Ethan's on the ground at Maplewood Estates. He's already served them with notice, and we've got video evidence of their illegal actions. This could be bigger than we thought. There's a pattern here, and it might tie to a larger player. I'll keep you posted." She hung up, her hands trembling with excitement, and opened her laptop to draft a press release. If Ethan's hunch was right, this wasn't just about one HOA, it could expose a statewide conspiracy. I stood in the Maplewood Estates Community Center, my heart pounding like a drum as I adjusted my North Carolina Energy Commission jacket, every eye in the room locked on me. The air was thick with tension as I slapped my badge onto the table, the sound echoing through the stunned silence. "Stephen Brooks and members of the Maplewood Estates HOA board," I announced, my voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through me. "I'm here as lead investigator for the state. Yesterday, you illegally trespassed on my property and removed $2,500 worth of legally installed solar equipment." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I spotted Linda shrinking into her seat, her usual smugness replaced by wide-eyed panic, while Stephen froze mid-sentence at the podium, his mouth hanging open like a broken hinge. That's ridiculous," he stammered, tugging at his tie. "We were enforcing our rules." "Rules that break state law," I fired back, plugging my laptop into the projector with a swift, practiced motion. The screen lit up with Section 714 of the North Carolina Renewable Energy Act, bold and undeniable. This states clearly, HOAs cannot prohibit homeowners from installing solar energy systems. Period. A bead of sweat rolled down Stephen's temple as I clicked to my next slide. For 10 months, my office has documented 15 complaints from Maplewood residents. Every time, you used aesthetic concerns to block solar installations. I scanned the room, my gaze landing on Mrs. Thompson, a quiet widow from Pine Road, who stood up, her voice trembling but firm. "They denied my panels last spring," she said, her eyes glistening. "Said they'd hurt property values." A chorus of voices joined in, neighbors I'd barely spoken to before, now sharing their own stories of denied eco-friendly projects, fines, and harassment. The room buzzed with frustration, and Stephen banged his gavel, his face red with fury. "Order. This isn't an open forum," he shouted, but I wasn't done. I pulled out my phone and hit play on the recording from yesterday. Linda's voice filled the room, sharp and unapologetic. "The board voted unanimously. Those panels violate our aesthetic guidelines." Linda shot to her feet, her face twisted with rage. "He tricked us," she screeched, pointing at me. "This was a setup." "I've lived here for 2 years," I said, my voice calm but cutting. "I didn't ask for this assignment, but when my own HOA broke the law, took my property, and bragged about it, well, this got personal." I projected photos Jake had taken, my empty roof, tire tracks on my lawn from their trucks, and a clear shot of my panels stacked in Linda's garage. "This isn't just about my solar panels anymore," I said, my voice rising with conviction. "This is about your abuse of power, and it ends today." The doors burst open, and a tall woman in a crisp suit strode in, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. "Catherine Evans, County Property Inspector," she announced, dropping a thick folder on the table beside me. "Based on multiple reports and evidence gathered over the past year, I'm suspending all Maplewood Estates HOA board operations, effective immediately, pending a full investigation." The room erupted into chaos. "You can't do this," Linda shrieked, backing away from an officer. "We run this neighborhood." "Not anymore," Catherine said, her stare icy. She leaned in and whispered to me, "This goes deeper than solar panels, Ethan. We found financial irregularities in their records, 3 years of missing funds, shady contracts, and unexplained payments. Your case gave us the opening we needed." A hand touched my shoulder, and I turned to see Mrs. Thompson, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "My late husband dreamed of those panels. Our electric bills are crushing me." One by one, neighbors approached, sharing their stories: denied eco-friendly landscaping, harassment over tiny infractions, selective rule enforcement. Jake pushed through the crowd, his phone in hand, his eyes wide. "You need to see this," he said, hitting play on a video he'd recorded at a board meeting last month. On screen, Stephen and Linda sat with a man in a pricey suit. Don't worry about legal pushback, the man said, his voice slick. My company can't afford to lose customers to Home Solar. Keep blocking those installations, and your consulting fees will keep coming. I stared at the screen, my jaw tight. Who is that? CEO of BlueSky Power, Jake said. Our regional utility company. The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just an HOA breaking the law. It was corporate corruption on a massive scale. Catherine watched the video, her expression hardening. We need to bring in the state attorney general, she said. This crosses jurisdictions now. Outside, news vans were already pulling up, their lights flashing in the evening dusk. Someone had tipped off the media, and the story was about to explode. What happens now? I asked Catherine, my mind racing. Now we follow the money, she said, a grim smile on her face. Over the next 3 weeks, the investigation snowballed. Stephen and Linda were slapped with ankle monitors, confined to house arrest while the state attorney general dug deeper. BlueSky Power installed new, top-of-the-line solar panels on my roof at no cost, a settlement to avoid worse PR, while news outlets ran headlines like HOA corruption exposed. Homeowner turns tables on board. I received hundreds of emails from homeowners across the state, each one detailing similar HOA abuses. I forwarded every single one to Catherine, who added them to the growing case file. On a crisp Saturday morning, I was overseeing workers replacing my garden fence, another part of the settlement, when a car I didn't recognize parked across the street. A woman stepped out, clutching her purse, her expression nervous. Are you Ethan Carter? She asked, her voice shaky. The solar panel guy from the news? I nodded, wary. Who's asking? I'm Jessica Brooks, Stephen's wife, she said, glancing around like she expected to be caught. Can we talk privately? Inside my kitchen, Jessica's hands trembled as she handed me a flash drive. Stephen kept records of every HOA in the county working with BlueSky Power, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Names, dates, payments, he called it his insurance policy. But yesterday, BlueSky's lawyers told him they'd make sure he took the fall. I'm not letting him drag our family down alone. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop, my heart racing as I opened the files, spreadsheets, emails, meeting notes, all detailing a 5-year scheme across 22 neighborhoods. I called Catherine immediately, and within hours, the evidence was in the hands of the Attorney General. 2 months later, I stood in the community center again, watching as Maplewood elected a new HOA board. Mrs. Thompson became president, with Jake as treasurer, and their first act was passing bylaws to protect homeowners' rights to renewable energy. As I drove home, I spotted a moving truck outside Linda's house. Her husband was loading boxes while she directed him, occasionally shooting glares at the new solar panels now gleaming on 6 houses on our street, including mine. Catherine pulled into my driveway as I arrived, a grin on her face. Quite a view, she said, nodding at my solar array. The panels or Linda leaving? I asked, chuckling. Both, she said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a letter from the governor's office, offering me a position leading a new statewide task force on HOA reform. They want you to do for North Carolina what you did here, Catherine said. Protect homeowners from corrupt boards. That evening, my backyard was filled with neighbors for a celebration. Kids played on swing sets that once broke HOA rules, and gardens bloomed with native plants instead of the old required ornamentals. I never meant for any of this, I told Jake as we watched the sunset, the sky painted orange and pink. I just wanted to lower my electric bill. Sometimes the smallest fights lead to the biggest wins, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. Mrs. Thompson waved her tablet, grabbing everyone's attention. Breaking news, she announced. The screen showed BlueSky Power's headquarters, with FBI agents escorting executives out in handcuffs. Cheers erupted around me as the reporter's voice cut through. Sources say evidence provided by a homeowner led to today's raids. Speech, someone shouted, and suddenly all eyes were on me. I stood, my throat tight with emotion. I'm not special, I said, my voice cracking. I just refused to back down when they took my solar panels. But this, I gestured to the crowd, to the united neighbors who barely spoke months ago. This is what happens when we stand together. Mrs. Thompson held up a clipboard, her eyes shining. The governor's task force is just the start, Ethan. People across the state are asking for your help. I looked at my neighbors, at the community we'd rebuilt, and took the clipboard, my resolve stronger than ever. I started this for clean energy, I said, but now I'm fighting for every homeowner's right to choose. Jake raised his glass, his voice booming. To the power of one guy who wouldn't quit. As everyone cheered, I glanced across the street. Linda stood in her half-empty driveway, her face twisted with bitterness as her reign crumbled before her eyes. This fight is far from over, and I need your help to keep it going. If you've got an HOA story or want to see more of this battle, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you'd do if your HOA came for your solar panels. Let's keep shining a light on these bullies together.